The message arrived on a Tuesday morning, encrypted in 17 different layers of security. Vextalon, guild master of the most feared assassins in the galaxy, cracked his knuckles as he decoded the final layer. What he read made his 3 hearts skip a beat. The Zephyrian Trade Consortium wanted someone dead. That was normal. What was not normal was the price they offered. 50 million galactic credits. Enough money to buy a small moon. Enough to fund his entire guild for 20 years without taking another job. Vextalon had been in the killing business for over 400 years, and he had never seen a contract this generous. He read the target information again. Ambassador Kang Dae-ho of the Terran Federation, a human diplomat who would be attending the Peace Summit on Nexus Prime Station next month. The file showed a middle-aged man with kind eyes and graying hair. He looked harmless enough. Vextalon pressed a button on his desk. Within minutes, his top lieutenants filled the war room. The chamber was built inside a hollowed-out asteroid, hidden in the dark space between star systems. Red lights cast long shadows across the metal walls. "We have received an interesting offer," Vextalon announced, his voice echoing in the chamber. He activated the holographic display, showing the contract details to his team. Thulme was the first to speak. She was old by any standard, having survived 3 centuries in the assassination trade. Her scaled skin bore the scars of 1,000 missions. Most importantly, she was still alive when 90% of assassins died within their first decade. "The price is too high," she said simply. Younger guild members looked at her in surprise. Korthek, barely 50 years old and eager to prove himself, laughed. "Too high? There is no such thing as too much money, old woman." Thulme turned her cold gaze on him. "Boy, I have been killing targets since before you were hatched. When someone offers this much money for what appears to be a simple job, it means the job is not simple at all." Quindar, the guild's intelligence chief, cleared his throat. He was methodical and careful, traits that had kept him alive in a business where curiosity often led to early graves. "I took the liberty of researching the target species before this meeting. What I found is concerning." He activated another display. Data scrolled across the screen, showing human expansion across the galaxy. Humans first made contact with galactic civilization 212 years ago. In that short time, they have established colonies in over 300 star systems. Their military fleet ranks 4th in size among all galactic powers. "So they are successful," Korthek said with a shrug. "What does that matter to us? We kill individuals, not entire species." "That is exactly the problem," Quindar replied. "I have been studying human psychological profiles. They appear to have an unusual response to threats against their leadership." The intelligence chief brought up historical records. 43 years ago, pirates killed Earth's first colonial governor. The human response was extreme. They did not simply hunt down the pirates who pulled the trigger. They dismantled the entire pirate confederation. Every ship, every base, every organization that had ever worked with them. The campaign lasted 32 years and ended with the complete extinction of the pirate group. The room fell silent. Even Korthek looked uncomfortable. "Furthermore," Quindar continued, "humans appear to have a concept they call collective responsibility. An attack on their leadership is treated as an attack on their entire species. They do not simply seek justice. They seek what they call comprehensive security." Vextalon studied the data with growing unease. "What else do we know about their military capabilities?" "Their technology is roughly equivalent to most galactic powers," Quindar answered. "But their tactics are unusual. They appear to plan not just for victory but for making defeat so costly that enemies will avoid future conflicts." Thulme nodded grimly. "I have heard stories from mercenaries who have fought humans. They say humans have a psychological condition that makes them more dangerous when cornered. They call it spite." "Spite?" Korthek asked. "The willingness to inflict damage even when you cannot win," Thulme explained. "Most species retreat when defeat becomes inevitable. Humans often choose to cause as much harm as possible before they fall. It makes them unpredictable and extremely dangerous." Vextalon processed this information. In 4 centuries of running assassination contracts, he had learned to recognize warning signs. Everything about this contract raised red flags. "There is another issue," Quindar said. "The Zephyrian Trade Consortium specifically requested that the assassination appear accidental. They do not want humans to know it was murder. Why would that matter? Korthik asked. Thulme answered before Quindar could speak. Because they are afraid of human retaliation. If humans believe their ambassador died in an accident, they will mourn and move on. If they discover he was murdered, they will hunt down everyone responsible. The guild master stood and walked to the large viewport that looked out into empty space. His reflection stared back at him, a creature built for killing with 4 arms and razor-sharp claws. He had survived by making smart decisions, and every instinct told him this contract was a trap. What do we know about this specific human? He asked. Quindar pulled up Ambassador Kang Deho's file. Age 57. Married to a human female named Park Miran. 2 adult children. He has been a diplomat for 31 years and is widely respected in human society. He specializes in trade negotiations and has successfully resolved dozens of commercial disputes. So he is important to them, Vextalon observed. Very important. He is scheduled to lead the human delegation at the Nexus Prime Peace Summit. The summit is intended to establish new trade routes through human space. If successful, it will make humans one of the most influential economic powers in the galaxy. Now Vextalon understood why the Zephyrians wanted Kang dead. The trade consortium had dominated galactic commerce for centuries. Human expansion threatened their monopoly. Eliminating the ambassador would disrupt the summit and delay human economic growth. It was a logical strategy. It was also incredibly dangerous. Summon the full council, Vextalon ordered. We need to discuss this contract in detail before making any decisions. As his lieutenants filed out of the war room, Thulme remained behind. You are going to refuse the contract, she said. It was not a question. I am considering it, Vextalon admitted. 50 million credits is tempting, but not if it costs us our lives. Wise, Thulme said. I have survived this long by avoiding fights I cannot win. Something tells me that killing humans is a fight no one can win. Vextalon stared out at the stars and wondered if he was about to make the smartest decision of his very long life. Dr. Park Sojin walked through the corridors of Nexus Prime Station, her footsteps echoing softly on the metal flooring. She carried a data pad in one hand and a cup of coffee in the other. To anyone watching, she looked like just another scientist going about her daily work. Hidden in the shadows between cargo containers, Assassin Kylemore observed her routine. He had been tracking the human xenopsychologist for 3 days now. The guild wanted intelligence on human behavior patterns before making their final decision about the contract. What Kylemore had seen so far confused him. Dr. Park appeared completely ordinary. She worked in a small laboratory, studying alien cultural interactions. She ate lunch at the same cafe every day. She video called her family on Earth each evening. Nothing about her suggested she was dangerous, yet something felt wrong. Kylemore was a professional. He had stalked hundreds of targets across dozens of worlds. He knew how to read body language, how to spot weaknesses, how to identify the perfect moment to strike. But watching Dr. Park made him uncomfortable in ways he could not explain. She never seemed to look directly at him, but somehow he felt like she knew he was there. She walked with casual confidence through areas of the station that made even hardened criminals nervous. Most strange of all, she seemed to notice everything around her, without appearing to pay attention to anything at all. 3 levels above, Captain Kim Hansol conducted his security sweep of the diplomatic quarters. The Terran Security Forces officer moved through the station with practiced efficiency. He checked sensor readings, tested communication links, and updated security protocols. Assassin Drelkun watched from a maintenance shaft, recording the human's methods. What he saw impressed him despite himself. Captain Kim did not just follow standard security procedures. He improved them. At each checkpoint, he made small adjustments that would make future attacks more difficult. He repositioned sensors to eliminate blind spots. He changed guard rotations to prevent predictable patterns. He identified 17 potential security weaknesses that the station's own security team had missed. More troubling, Captain Kim seemed to think like an assassin. He studied every corridor from the perspective of someone planning an attack. He asked questions that suggested he understood exactly how killers operated. How long have you been in security work? Station Administrator Vorth asked during their inspection. 15 years, Captain Kim replied, scanning the area with sharp eyes. But every human learns basic security awareness as children. We call it situational awareness. Young children learn this? Vorth seemed surprised. Of course, we teach our young to always know their surroundings, to identify exits, to recognize when something feels wrong. It keeps them safe. Drelkin made a note in his report. Humans taught their children to think like soldiers. That was unusual among galactic species. Back in her laboratory, Dr. Park reviewed her research on interspecies conflict resolution. She had been studying how different alien cultures responded to perceived threats. Her work was academic, but her findings were disturbing. Most species followed predictable patterns when threatened. They either submitted to avoid further conflict, or they fought back with measured force designed to establish dominance. Both responses were rational and limited. Humans, according to her own research, did neither. When threatened, humans escalated. They did not seek to establish dominance. They sought to eliminate the threat entirely. Her data showed that humans had never accepted a peace treaty that left their enemies capable of future attacks. They either completely destroyed their opponents, or they created conditions that made future aggression impossible. Dr. Park found this pattern disturbing because she was human herself. She recognized the truth in her own research. Humans did not simply want to win conflicts. They wanted to make sure those conflicts never happened again. Her computer chimed with an incoming message from her research assistant on Earth. The young graduate student had uncovered historical records from humanity's early space expansion period. The message read, Dr. Park, I found something interesting about the Centauri incident you asked me to research. The official reports say a human freighter fought off a pirate attack, but I found survivor interviews from the pirate side. They described the human crew as fighting like they were already dead. One pirate said the humans kept attacking even after their ship was crippled. He said they acted like they would rather die than surrender. Dr. Park stared at the message for a long time. She had requested the research as part of her academic work. But now she wondered if she was uncovering something more significant. Meanwhile, in the station's main security office, Captain Kim reviewed threat assessments with the station commander. The peace summit was still 2 weeks away, but preparations were already intense. Are you expecting trouble? The commander asked. Captain Kim considered the question carefully. Humans always expect trouble. That is why we rarely encounter it. What do you mean? My grandfather taught me something when I was young, Captain Kim said. He said the best way to avoid a fight is to be so prepared for it that nobody wants to start one. Humans spend a lot of effort making sure our enemies know the cost of attacking us. The commander nodded slowly. He had heard similar statements from other human security personnel. They seemed to view deterrence as an art form. In his hidden surveillance post, Drelkin recorded every word. The Guild would want to know that humans viewed conflict preparation as a cultural value, not just a military necessity. 3 days later, Thalmay received the surveillance reports from both operatives. She read them in her private quarters, deep in the asteroid base that housed the Assassin Guild. The reports painted a picture that made her increasingly nervous. Humans, it seemed, did not have soldiers and civilians the way other species did. They had humans who were currently fighting, and humans who were ready to fight if necessary. Even their scientists and diplomats maintained military-level awareness of their surroundings. More concerning was their apparent psychological makeup. The report suggested that humans viewed surrender as worse than death. They would rather die fighting than live in defeat. This made them unpredictable and extremely dangerous. Thalmay had seen this behavior before in certain predator species, animals that would fight to the death rather than submit to capture. The difference was that humans were intelligent predators. They could plan, coordinate, and remember grudges across generations. She activated her communication system and sent a priority message to Guildmaster Vextalon. We need to talk. The message read, the surveillance reports change everything. This is not just a dangerous contract. This is a species extinction event waiting to happen. As she sent the message, Thalmay wondered if the Guild was about to make the smartest decision in its 4,000-year history, or if they were already too late to avoid a war they could never win. Outside her window, the stars looked different somehow, less like distant lights and more like the eyes of something vast and patient, watching from the darkness. Guild researcher Morthak sat in the data archives deep beneath the asteroid base. Screens glowed around him in the darkness, displaying thousands of files about human civilization. What he had discovered in the past week made him question everything he thought he knew about intelligent species. He had started by studying human entertainment. Most species created stories about cooperation, survival, or romance. Humans created stories about war. Their children grew up watching films about impossible battles where outnumbered heroes refused to surrender. They read books about soldiers who fought against overwhelming odds. Their most popular stories celebrated characters who chose death over defeat. Morthak found this disturbing. Most species taught their young to avoid conflict and seek peaceful solutions. Humans seemed to teach their children that some things were worth dying for, but the entertainment was not the worst part. The historical records were far more frightening. Humans had fought wars continuously throughout their development. Not just territorial disputes or resource conflicts, but wars of complete destruction. They had developed weapons capable of destroying their entire planet, then pointed those weapons at each other. Most species would have destroyed themselves with such power. Humans had used the threat of mutual destruction to create peace. They called it deterrence, but Morthak recognized it for what it really was: a species-wide suicide pact designed to make war too expensive for anyone to consider. He found records of something humans called the World Wars. In these conflicts, entire nations had mobilized every citizen for battle. Children had worked in weapons factories. Elderly people had served as guards and messengers. Farmers had become soldiers. Scientists had designed new ways to kill. When threatened seriously, humans did not just send their military to fight. They became a military. Morthak compiled his findings into a report that made his hands shake as he wrote it. Humans were not just another species. They were a civilization built around the concept of total war. On Nexus Prime Station, diplomatic aide Cho Min-jun attended a routine trade meeting with representatives from several species. The discussion was boring, focused on shipping schedules and tariff rates, but during a break he found himself in conversation with a Zephyrian merchant. "Your people have expanded very quickly," the Zephyrian observed. "Some species worry about human intentions." Cho Min-jun smiled politely. "We are peaceful by preference, but we have a saying: you can kill a human, but you cannot defeat humanity." The Zephyrian seemed confused. "What does that mean?" "It means we remember," Cho Min-jun explained simply. "We remember who helps us and we remember who hurts us. We take care of our friends and we take care of our problems." The way he said it made the Zephyrian uncomfortable. Cho Min-jun's tone was friendly, but there was something underneath it that sounded like a promise or a threat. After the meeting, the Zephyrian filed a report to his superiors. He described the human diplomat as politely threatening and recommended caution in future dealings with humanity. Back at the guild base, Tholme studied combat records from conflicts involving humans. What she found confirmed her worst fears. Humans had never lost a war where their homeworld was threatened. They had lost battles, lost ships, lost entire fleets. But when their survival was at stake, they always found a way to win. More disturbing was their method of victory. Humans did not simply defeat their enemies. They destroyed them so completely that surrender became impossible. She found records of the Hegemony War, fought 60 years ago. An alien empire had attacked human colonies, killing millions of civilians. The human response had been methodical and terrifying. They had not just counterattacked. They had systematically dismantled the entire hegemony civilization. They destroyed military bases, conquered industrial worlds, and captured government leaders. But they did not stop there. They had tracked down every organization that had supported the hegemony. Every weapons supplier, every mercenary group, every government that had provided aid. All of them had been eliminated or forced to pay massive reparations. The war had officially lasted 3 years. The aftermath had continued for decades, as humans methodically removed any threat of future aggression. Tholme realized that humans did not just fight wars. They solved problems, permanently. She found another pattern in the records that chilled her blood. Humans kept detailed files on every species they encountered. They studied alien psychology, military capabilities, and cultural weaknesses. Not out of curiosity, but for strategic planning. If war came, humans would know exactly how to defeat their enemies. They would understand alien thinking patterns, predict alien reactions, and exploit alien fears. They prepared for conflicts that had not happened yet, against enemies who did not even know they were enemies. Guildmaster Vex Talon received Morthak's cultural analysis and Tholme's military assessment on the same day. He read both reports in his private chamber, feeling older with each page. The picture they painted was clear and terrifying. Humans were not just another galactic species. They were apex predators disguised as diplomats. They had evolved on a world full of dangerous creatures, where only the most aggressive and adaptable survived. They had developed intelligence not to create art or philosophy, but to become better killers. Their entire civilization was built around the assumption that conflict was inevitable and that survival required the complete destruction of threats. They did not seek to coexist with enemies. They sought to eliminate the possibility of having enemies. Vextalon understood now why the Zephyrians wanted the assassination to look like an accident. They were not just afraid of human retaliation, they were terrified of it. If humans discovered that Ambassador Kang had been murdered, they would not simply hunt down the assassin. They would systematically destroy every organization involved in the plot. The Zephyrian Trade Consortium would cease to exist. The Assassin Guild would be eliminated. Anyone who had ever worked with either group would be marked for death. Humans would turn the assassination into a lesson that would be remembered for centuries. This is what happens to those who threaten us. Vextalon realized that accepting this contract would not just be dangerous. It would be an act of species suicide. He activated his communication system and sent a message to all guild operatives. Recall all surveillance teams immediately. Prepare for emergency council session. We have a decision to make. The emergency council session convened at midnight station time. Every senior member of the Assassin Guild gathered in the war room, their faces grim in the red lighting. Guildmaster Vextalon stood at the head of the table, holding the contract offer that had started this nightmare. We need to discuss mission parameters, he announced, specifically whether this mission has any parameters that allow for success. Operative Silmoth activated the holographic display. She had spent the past week studying human response patterns to leadership attacks. Her findings filled the air with data charts and casualty reports. I analyzed 17 historical incidents where human leaders were killed or attacked, she began. The results are consistent across all cases. Humans do not simply investigate and punish. They restructure reality to prevent similar incidents. She highlighted the case of Governor Chen Wei-ming, killed in a shuttle crash 50 years ago. Initial investigations suggested mechanical failure, but humans had treated it as a potential assassination anyway. They did not just improve shuttle safety, Silmoth continued. They redesigned the entire colonial transportation system. They created redundant security networks. They established protocols that made attacking leaders exponentially more difficult in the future. But that was probably an accident, young Korthek protested. That is exactly the point, Silmoth replied coldly. Humans prepare for threats whether those threats are real or not. They assume the worst and plan accordingly. If we kill Ambassador Kang, they will assume it was murder regardless of how we do it. She brought up another case, Admiral Park Dong-soo, killed in what appeared to be a random pirate attack. Humans spent 12 years tracking down every pirate organization in that sector of space, not just the ones responsible but all of them. They decided that allowing pirates to exist created unacceptable risk to their leadership. Vextalon studied the data with growing horror. They eliminated entire pirate confederations over one attack? They eliminated the concept of piracy in human space, Silmoth corrected. No pirate group has operated successfully in human territory for 40 years. They made it economically and strategically impossible. Thulme leaned forward. Show them the Merchant Prince incident. Silmoth nodded and changed the display. 30 years ago, a human trade negotiator named Lee Kyung-ho was poisoned during a business dinner. The killer was identified as a professional assassin working for a rival trading company. That sounds like a simple murder investigation, Korthek said. It was, until humans got involved, Silmoth replied. They did not just arrest the assassin and the company that hired him. They investigated every business deal the target company had made for the previous decade. They audited their financial records. They traced their supply chains and partnerships. The display showed a web of connections spreading across multiple star systems. They discovered that the company had connections to 14 other organizations that used questionable business practices. Some had employed assassins before. Others had used coercion or fraud. What did they do? Vextalon asked, though he suspected he already knew. They destroyed all of them, Silmoth answered. Not just the company that ordered the killing, but every organization connected to it. They used legal challenges, economic pressure, and direct military action. Within 5 years, the entire network had collapsed. The humans called it cleaning house, Tholme added. They decided that allowing corrupt businesses to exist created a threat to their people. So they eliminated corruption from their economic sphere. Korthek looked uncomfortable. But we are not part of their economic sphere. We operate outside human space. Intelligence Chief Quindar spoke up. That is where you are wrong. I have been analyzing human expansion patterns. They do not just claim territory. They create spheres of influence that extend far beyond their official borders. He activated a star map showing human colonies and trade routes. Human businesses operate in neutral space. Human diplomats negotiate treaties with species we work with. Human security forces patrol areas where we have bases. Red lines appeared on the map, connecting human influence to every major criminal organization in the galaxy. If we kill Ambassador Kang, we do not just threaten human interests. We threaten the stability of their entire network. And humans protect their networks, Silmuth added. They have to because their expansion strategy depends on other species trusting them. If we prove that human leaders can be killed with impunity, we damage their credibility across the galaxy. Vex Talon began to understand the true scope of the problem. So they would have to retaliate massively to maintain their position. Exactly, Quindar confirmed. They would need to make an example that no one would forget. The message would have to be clear. Attacking humans brings consequences that extend far beyond the individual assassin. What kind of consequences? Korthek asked. Tholme answered. The complete elimination of our organization. The destruction of any group that has ever worked with us. Economic sanctions against any world that has sheltered us. And a permanent bounty on the head of every guild member. They would also restructure galactic security to prevent future assassinations, Quindar added. New identification systems. Expanded surveillance networks. Restrictions on movement between systems. They would make our profession impossible to practice. Silmoth brought up her final case study. Dr. Kim Haejin, a human scientist killed in what appeared to be a laboratory accident. Humans investigated anyway and discovered evidence of sabotage. The perpetrator was never identified. What happened? Vex Talon asked. Humans redesigned scientific security protocols across all human facilities. They created new detection systems for sabotage. They established rapid response teams for investigating suspicious deaths. Most importantly, they shared all of this technology with their allies. The result? Silmuth continued. Laboratory sabotage became virtually impossible across half the galaxy. Not just in human space, but anywhere humans had influence. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Humans did not just respond to threats. They eliminated entire categories of threats. There is one more thing, Quindar said quietly. I believe humans already know about the contract. Every head turned toward him. What do you mean? Vex Talon demanded. Ambassador Kang's security detail has been upgraded. Captain Kim Hansol requested additional personnel and equipment for the summit. The official reason is routine precaution, but the timing is suspicious. Furthermore, Quindar continued, I intercepted communications suggesting that human intelligence services have been investigating Zephyrian activities. They may already suspect the trade consortium of planning something. Are you saying this is a trap? Tholme asked. I am saying humans are very good at anticipating threats, Quindar replied. They may be using Ambassador Kang as bait to identify and eliminate potential assassins. Vex Talon felt his world shifting beneath him. Not only was the contract impossibly dangerous, but it might be exactly what humans wanted them to attempt. If we take this job, we do not just risk failure, he said slowly. We guarantee it. Humans have prepared for this exact scenario. And if we refuse? Korthek asked. Then we live to take other contracts, Tholme said firmly. There is no amount of money worth declaring war on a species that has never lost a war that mattered to them. Vex Talon looked around the room at faces that had seen centuries of violence and death. For the first time in his long life, he saw fear in the eyes of killers who feared nothing. The council deliberated for 18 hours. Guildmaster Vex Talon had seen many difficult decisions in his 4 centuries of leadership, but nothing like this. The contract offer still glowed on the table before them. 50 million credits for what should have been a simple assassination. But nothing about this was simple anymore. Tholme presented her final analysis to the exhausted council members. I have been killing for 300 years, she began. her voice carrying the weight of experience. I have survived because I learned to recognize impossible missions. This contract is not just impossible, it is suicide. She activated the holographic display one last time. Let me explain what success would look like. We kill Ambassador Kang, we escape Nexus Prime Station. We collect our payment from the Zephyrians. Then what? The display showed a timeline extending decades into the future. Humans begin investigating immediately. They discover evidence of murder within days. They trace the assassination back to us within weeks. They identify our base locations, our operatives, our financial networks. But they do not stop there, Thulme continued. They investigate the Zephyrian Trade Consortium. They discover the contract. They map every connection between the Zephyrians and other criminal organizations. They create a list of targets that includes everyone who has ever worked with either group. The timeline showed expanding circles of destruction. Within 1 year, the Zephyrian Trade Consortium ceases to exist. Within 2 years, our guild is eliminated. Within 5 years, every major criminal organization in this sector of space has been destroyed or driven underground. And the humans? Korthik asked weakly. The humans implement new security protocols that make future assassinations nearly impossible. They create detection systems we cannot defeat. They establish response networks that can track us across the galaxy. They turn assassination from a profession into a death sentence. Master Quindar stood up slowly. I have reached the same conclusion through different analysis. Humans are not just individually dangerous. They are collectively unstoppable when motivated by threat. He brought up economic projections. The financial cost of human retaliation would exceed our payment by orders of magnitude. They control key trade routes, advanced technologies, and strategic resources. Making enemies of them would cost us more than this contract could ever pay. Moreover, Quindar continued, humans have been known to make generous offers to their enemies' rivals. Any organization that helped eliminate us could expect very favorable treatment from humanity going forward. You mean they would pay others to hunt us? Fextellen said grimly. I mean they would make hunting us profitable, Quindar corrected. They would turn the entire criminal underworld against us by offering better contracts than we could ever match. Young Korthek, who had initially been enthusiastic about the contract, now looked sick. So we cannot take the job without destroying ourselves? That is correct, Thulme confirmed. But there is something else. Something that makes this situation even worse. She paused for effect. I believe humans want us to take this contract. Shocked silence filled the room. Explain, Vextalen ordered. Think about it from their perspective, Thulme said. They know the Zephyrians see them as a threat. They know someone will eventually try to eliminate their leadership. They know professional killers exist. So they create an opportunity that looks tempting but is actually impossible. They use Ambassador Kang as bait to identify threats to human leadership. Then they eliminate those threats permanently. You think this entire summit is a trap? Quindar asked. I think humans are very good at turning problems into opportunities, Thulme replied. If we take this contract, we solve multiple problems for them. We identify ourselves as enemies. We provide justification for expanded security measures. We give them an excuse to restructure galactic criminal networks. She gestured to the holographic timeline. Notice that every human response to leadership attacks resulted in permanent improvements to their security. They do not just react to threats. They use threats to build better defenses. Vextalen felt a chill that had nothing to do with the asteroid's cold atmosphere. Are you saying humans anticipated this exact situation? I am saying humans prepare for situations they have not yet encountered, Thulme answered. They study their enemies, predict their actions, and create scenarios that favor human interests. This contract appears generous because it is supposed to, she continued. It is designed to attract exactly the kind of organization that humans want to eliminate. We take the bait, we reveal ourselves, and they solve their security problem permanently. Operative Silmoth nodded slowly. It explains why the payment is so high. They want to make sure every major criminal organization considers the offer. Then they identify and eliminate all potential threats at once. A species-wide sting operation, Quindar murmured. Brilliant and terrifying. Vextalen stood and walked to the viewport overlooking empty space. In the distance, he could see the faint glow of human colonies. Worlds full of beings who had somehow evolved beyond the simple kill or be killed mentality that dominated the galaxy. We have spent this entire time assuming humans think like us, he said finally, but they do not. They think in ways we cannot fully understand. He turned back to face the council. They do not just want to survive. They want to thrive. They do not just want to defeat enemies. They want to eliminate the possibility of having enemies. So what do? Korthek asked. We make the smartest decision in guild history, Vextalon announced. We refuse the contract. But 50 million credits, Korthek began, is worthless if we are dead. Thulme cut him off. Money cannot buy back extinct species. Vextalon activated the communication system. I am going to contact the Zephyrian Trade Consortium and formally decline their offer. What reason will you give? Quindar asked. The truth, Vextalon replied, that we have analyzed the mission parameters and determined that success is impossible. That the target species represents an unacceptable risk to guild survival. That no amount of payment justifies species suicide. And then? Silmoth asked. Then we do something unprecedented, Vextalon said. We share our intelligence with other criminal organizations. We warn them about what humans are really capable of. We make sure no one else is stupid enough to accept contracts against human leadership. Why would we do that? Korthek asked, confused. Because, Thulme explained, if someone else takes a contract like this and fails, humans will restructure galactic security anyway. Every criminal organization will suffer, whether they were involved or not. We protect ourselves by protecting others, Vextalon agreed. We survive by making sure no one starts a war we cannot win. The vote was unanimous. For the first time in 4,000 years, the most feared assassin guild in the galaxy refused a contract. Not because it was too difficult, but because their target species was too dangerous to attack. As the council dispersed, Vextalon remained at the viewport looking out at human space. He wondered if somewhere out there, a human intelligence officer was marking his organization's file as neutralized through deterrence. The thought did not frighten him. It impressed him. Guildmaster Vextalon sat alone in his private chamber, staring at the communication device that would end the most expensive contract offer in guild history. The encrypted line to the Zephyrian Trade Consortium waited for his call. He had rehearsed his words carefully. This conversation would determine whether his guild survived the next decade, the connection established with a soft chime. Executive Director Zeltaran appeared on the screen, his blue-scaled face showing barely contained excitement. Guildmaster Vextalon, the Zephyrian began smoothly. I trust you have reached a decision regarding our generous offer. We have, Vextalon replied calmly. The guild formally declines the contract. Silence stretched across the communication link. Zeltaran's expression shifted from excitement to confusion to anger. Decline, the Zephyrian repeated. You are refusing 50 million credits for a single elimination? We are refusing to commit species suicide, Vextalon corrected. Our analysis indicates that this contract represents impossible mission parameters and unacceptable risk factors. Impossible? Zeltaran's voice rose. He is one diplomat on a space station. How is that impossible? Vextalon had prepared for this question. Director, have you studied human retaliation patterns for attacks on their leadership? They are just another species, Zeltaran said dismissively. What could they possibly do to an organization like yours? They could eliminate us completely, Vextalon answered. And they would. Humans do not simply punish individual attacks. They restructure reality to prevent similar attacks in the future. You are being paranoid, Zeltaran insisted. We are offering double the previous amount. 100 million credits. The offer hung in the air like poison gas. 100 million credits would fund the guild for 50 years. It would buy new ships, new weapons, new bases. It was more money than most governments possessed. No, Vextalon said firmly. Director, allow me to explain something. Humans have never lost a war where their homeworld was threatened. They have never accepted peace terms that left their enemies capable of future attacks. They have never forgotten an injury done to their people. So what? Zeltaran demanded. So killing their ambassador would not be a simple assassination. It would be an act of war against their entire species. And humans wage war differently than anyone else in the galaxy. Vextalon activated his own display, showing the research his guild had compiled. When humans fight, they do not seek to establish dominance. They seek to eliminate threats permanently. They would hunt down every member of our guild. They would destroy every organization that had ever worked with us. They would make it impossible for any assassin to operate in their sphere of influence. Which director now includes most of civilized space? Zeltaran's face had gone pale. You cannot be serious. I am completely serious. Taking this contract would result in the extinction of our organization and massive damage to yours. No amount of money is worth that risk. The Zephyrian leaned forward desperately. 200 million credits. Final offer. Director, Vextilon said gently. You could offer us every credit in your treasury, and the answer would still be no. Dead beings cannot spend money. He paused, then decided to share one final piece of intelligence. There is something else you should know. We believe humans may already be aware of your intentions. What do you mean? Zeltaran asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Ambassador Kang's security has been significantly upgraded. Human intelligence services have been investigating Zephyrian activities. The timing suggests they may be using the Peace Summit as an opportunity to identify threats to their leadership. You mean it's a trap? I mean humans are very good at anticipating their enemies' actions. If you proceed with this plan using other assets, you will likely find that humans are prepared for exactly what you intend to do. The communication line went quiet for nearly a minute. When Zeltaran spoke again, his voice was shaky. What would you recommend? Abandon this course of action entirely, Vextilon advised. Find ways to compete with humans economically, rather than trying to eliminate them militarily. They respect competent opponents. They eliminate threats. And if we have already approached other organizations, then pray they are as wise as we are. The connection ended without further pleasantries. Vextilon sat back in his chair, feeling older than his 4 centuries. 3 days later, he sent encrypted warnings to every major criminal organization in known space. The message was simple. Humans were not targets, they were apex predators. Anyone foolish enough to attack their leadership would face species-level retaliation. The response was swift and unanimous. Every assassin guild, mercenary company, and pirate confederation added humans to their extinction event lists. Contracts against human leadership were classified as suicide missions and banned by mutual agreement. On Nexus Prime Station, Ambassador Kang Dae-ho delivered his opening address to the Peace Summit. The speech was broadcast across the galaxy, reaching billions of beings on thousands of worlds. We gather today not as competitors, but as partners in building a better future, he said, his voice carrying conviction and warmth. Humanity offers friendship to all who seek it, and we promise that those friendships will be honored and protected. In the audience, Dr. Park So-jin applauded with genuine enthusiasm. She had no idea that her daily routine had been watched by alien assassins, or that her unconscious tactical awareness had helped save her species from a war they never knew was being planned. Captain Kim Han-sol monitored the security feeds from his control room, professionally satisfied that the summit was proceeding without incident. His enhanced security measures had proven unnecessary, but he was not disappointed. The best security victories were the ones where nothing happened at all. 6 months later, Engineer Lee Garam, now promoted to captain of the merchant vessel New Seoul, shared drinks with Dr. Yoon Hairi at a space station bar. They were celebrating the successful completion of humanity's largest trade agreement in history. Strange how peaceful things have been lately, Dr. Yoon observed. Criminal activity in human space has dropped to almost nothing. Maybe word has gotten out that we are not easy targets, Captain Lee suggested with a smile. Or maybe criminals are smarter than we give them credit for, Dr. Yoon replied. Sometimes the best way to win a fight is not to start it in the first place. They had no idea how right she was. In the hidden asteroid base of the Assassin Guild, Thulme updated their operational files. Humans were now classified as extinction event targets, with a permanent prohibition on contracts involving their leadership, military personnel, or civilian population. The classification would be passed down through generations of assassins as a cautionary tale. Some species were not prey. Some fights could not be won. Some enemies were better left alone. The contract that would have funded the guild for decades had instead taught them the most valuable lesson in their 4,000-year history. The difference between difficult missions and impossible ones was sometimes a matter of species survival. Vextilon added a final note to the file. Humans do not simply defeat their enemies. They eliminate the possibility of having enemies. Any organization that threatens them will cease to exist, along with anyone who supported them. This is not cruelty. This is evolution in action. The most feared killers in the galaxy had learned to fear something themselves. The quiet, polite species that had somehow convinced an entire civilization full of predators to leave them alone. Not through superior firepower, but through superior reputation. The humans had won a war that was never fought, against enemies who had chosen not to become enemies at all. In the depths of space, humanity continued its expansion, protected not by weapons or walls, but by the simple understanding that some species were too dangerous to provoke. The killers had declined the contract, and in doing so they had chosen to live. 2 years had passed since the Assassin Guild refused the Zephyrian contract. The decision had created ripples across the criminal underworld that nobody had anticipated. What started as one guild's refusal to kill a human diplomat had fundamentally changed how the galaxy viewed humanity. In the depths of the Corvin Nebula, pirate Captain Hexmalar studied the updated threat assessment files. His crew had been planning raids on human shipping lanes for months. The cargo vessels looked easy enough. Lightly armed, predictable routes, valuable supplies. But the new intelligence reports made him reconsider. Boss, his Lieutenant Crix called from the sensor station. We got 3 human freighters approaching the jump point. Perfect setup for an ambush. Hexmalar looked at the tactical display. The freighters were spread out in loose formation, their shields down, weapons powered low. They looked like easy prey. Any escort ships? He asked. Negative. Just the 3 cargo haulers. Under normal circumstances, Hexmalar would have ordered an immediate attack. 3 freighters meant months of supplies and enough salvage to fund his crew for a year. But the intelligence reports haunted him. Every pirate organization that had attacked human vessels in the past 2 years had disappeared. Not defeated, not scattered, completely eliminated. The humans had tracked down their bases, their supply lines, their families. They had made piracy against human targets a death sentence. Sir? Crix asked, waiting for orders. Let them pass, Hexmalar decided. What? Boss, that's easy money floating right past us. That's easy death floating right past us, Hexmalar corrected. Find different targets. Avoid anything with human markings. On the freighter New Busan, Captain Park Jinwoo monitored his cargo manifest. He was carrying medical supplies to a colony world, completely unaware that pirates were watching him from the shadows. His ship's computer showed routine sensor pings from the nebula, but nothing unusual. Captain, his communications officer called. We're getting a priority message from Earth Fleet Command. Put it through. Admiral Song Hyejin appeared on the main screen. Captain Park, we have intelligence suggesting increased pirate activity in your area. Are you experiencing any problems? No, ma'am. Everything quiet out here. Haven't seen so much as a suspicious asteroid. Good. Continue your mission, but stay alert. If you encounter any threats, remember that Earth Fleet has rapid response units within 6 hours of your position. The transmission ended. Captain Park wondered why the Admiral had bothered to contact him personally. It seemed like overkill for a routine cargo run. He had no way of knowing that human intelligence services had been monitoring pirate communications across the sector. They knew about the planned attacks. They knew the pirates were watching, and they knew the pirates would choose not to attack. This was exactly what they wanted. On the pirate ship, Crix was arguing with his captain. We've gone 6 months without a decent score. The crew is getting restless. The crew can stay restless, Hexmalar replied. Better restless than dead. But boss, we're pirates. If we don't take ships, what's the point? Hexmalar pulled up the intelligence files and showed them to his lieutenant. Look at this. The Crimson Fleet, 40 ships, 300 crew members. They hit 1 human convoy last year. Result? Complete annihilation within 2 months. Maybe they just got unlucky, Crix suggested. The Blood Reapers, 30 ships, 200 crew. They captured a human passenger liner 6 months ago. Result? Every member hunted down and eliminated within 8 weeks. Crix studied the data with growing unease. All of them? Every single one. Humans don't just defeat pirate organizations. They erase them from existence. Hexmalar highlighted more entries. The Iron Wolves, the Star Killers, the Void Hunters, all gone. All eliminated after attacking human targets. So what do? Give up piracy? We adapt, Hexmalar said. We find targets that won't bring human vengeance down on our heads. There are plenty of other species to rob. 3 sectors away, Zephyrian Executive Director Zeltaran sat in his office, reviewing the economic reports that would determine his career. The trade consortium's profits had dropped by 30% in 2 years. Human expansion continued to erode their market dominance, but he no longer dreamed of assassination contracts. The failure to eliminate Ambassador Kang had taught him that humans were not obstacles to be removed. They were forces of nature to be navigated around. Like stellar winds or gravity wells, they had to be accepted as permanent features of the galactic landscape. His new strategy focused on finding markets where humans had no interest. Exotic goods from dangerous regions, specialized services that required skills humans had not yet developed, niche industries where his people's natural advantages could compete. It was less profitable than their old monopolies, but it was sustainable. More importantly, it would not bring human attention to their operations. On Nexus Prime Station, Dr. Park So-jin published her research on interspecies conflict resolution. Her paper, titled Deterrence Through Reputation: How Perceived Response Capability Prevents Conflict, won academic awards across 3 different disciplines. She had documented how humanity's reputation for total retaliation had effectively eliminated certain types of crimes against human targets. Pirates avoided human ships. Assassins refused contracts on human leaders. Terrorist organizations excluded human facilities from their target lists. It's fascinating, she told her research assistant during a video call to Earth. We've achieved security not through superior firepower, but through superior psychology. Other species have learned that attacking humans costs more than leaving humans alone. Is that a good thing? The assistant asked. It's an effective thing, Dr. Park replied. We've managed to reduce conflicts by convincing potential enemies that victory would be too expensive to pursue. What she did not mention was that human intelligence services had been very interested in her research. They had quietly implemented programs to enhance humanity's reputation for comprehensive retaliation, strategic leaks about military capabilities, carefully publicized responses to minor threats, a coordinated effort to make sure everyone in the galaxy understood the consequences of threatening human interests. Captain Kim Han-sol, now promoted to security chief for the entire Nexus Prime Station, received daily briefings on criminal activity throughout the sector. The reports showed a consistent pattern. Crime rates against human targets had dropped to nearly 0. Sir, his deputy asked during their morning meeting, do you think the criminals have given up on human targets permanently? No, Kim replied thoughtfully. I think they've learned that some fights aren't worth starting. But that knowledge has to be maintained. Each new generation of criminals needs to understand why their predecessors avoided us. He was right to be cautious. In the Outer Rim territories, young pirates and assassins who had not lived through the Great Purges were beginning to question the old taboos. They saw human ships and human officials as tempting targets, protected only by outdated superstitions. The older criminals worked hard to educate them. But education was not always enough. In the hidden base of the Assassin Guild, Thulme received reports from informants across the galaxy. The pattern was clear. Humanity's reputation was slowly fading among younger criminals who had never witnessed human retaliation. Firsthand, we have a problem, she told Guildmaster Vextalon during their monthly security briefing. The new generation doesn't understand why we refuse human contracts. They think we've become cautious in our old age. Then perhaps it is time for a demonstration, Vextalon replied. Not by us, but by them. Someone will eventually test human resolve. When they do, the lesson will be reinforced for another generation. And if no one tests them, then humans will create a test, Vextalon said with certainty. They understand that deterrence requires periodic reinforcement. They will not allow their reputation to fade through neglect. As if summoned by his words, news reports began flowing in from the frontier systems. A new pirate organization called the Nova Reapers had captured a human research vessel. The crew was being held for ransom. Thulme and Vextalon watched the news with professional interest. The Nova Reapers were young, ambitious, and completely ignorant of recent history. They had just volunteered to become an object lesson in why attacking humans was considered suicide. Within 72 hours, human military forces had located and surrounded the pirate base. The rescue mission was swift, professional, and utterly decisive. The research crew was recovered unharmed. The Nova Reapers ceased to exist as an organization. More importantly, the entire operation was broadcast across the galaxy's communication networks. Every criminal organization watched as humans demonstrated exactly why their reputation was deserved. The lesson was clear. Some species were too dangerous to provoke, and humanity was at the top of that list. In criminal hideouts across the galaxy, older thieves and killers nodded with satisfaction. The young had learned. The taboo was reinforced. Human targets would remain untouchable for another generation, and somewhere in human space, intelligence officers updated their files, marking the Nova Reaper incident as educational value achieved. The deterrent system was working exactly as designed.